All right, this is take two. The last attempt I made at broadcasting was cut short by a problem with Facebook's live streaming setup. So it seems like this one's going better. So I'm just going to start again. I'm just going to jump right into the figures for today. The United States is currently reporting 767,379 positive or confirmed cases. The United States has lost 40,750 lives. Today is April the 20th. Happy 420, everybody. Personally, I don't partake anymore. It just stopped being fun for me to get stoned some time ago. Occasionally, under certain circumstances, I might still try it out, but it's definitely not the daily fixture in my life that it was when I was in my 20s or even in my early 30s. It's baffling to me to think that that very shortly, in just a matter of a few months, I'm going to be 40. But hey, there's nothing that can be done about that, right? Well, nothing that I would want to do anyway. New York State is reporting 247,215 positive or confirmed cases, very nearly 250,000. I predict that by tomorrow, we'll see over 250,000 cases in New York State alone. They still remain somewhere around or just under a third of the total cases reported nationwide. And yet, nearly half of all fatalities as being reported currently are coming from New York. Washington State remains at 14th place, I believe. Currently, our state is recording 11,790 positive or confirmed cases. And our state has lost 634 lives. My former home state of Nebraska is reporting 1,474 positive or confirmed cases. And in Nebraska, 28 people have perished from the disease. Now, as long as I'm on the subject of figures, I'm pretty sure I mentioned in a previous broadcast that I got sick twice within a matter of just a few weeks. The first was the day after Christmas. I experienced a pretty ugly stomach bug. But then, barely 3 weeks later, I became sick a second time with respiratory issues, lost my voice, fever. I never got tested for COVID-19, although never in my life had I become sick twice within such a compressed period of time. And since that happened before the first case of coronavirus was confirmed here in our country, I didn't think much of it at the time. But in retrospect, I wonder. Really, I do. I had not been sick quite like that before. There's been speculation that coronavirus has been at large in the United States far longer than has been officially reported. That many people got sick and got better, and like me, they might have thought, well, that was strange and unpleasant, but hey, it's over now, and gone right back to life as usual. Now, if that's the case, how many people in the United States actually contracted coronavirus? And how different is that figure from the one that is being reported, the one that I'm reading out from worldometers.info every day? What if the number of people in the United States who have gotten coronavirus is way, way, way higher than we actually think that it is? Now, if a person gets sick, goes and lays down for a couple days and gets better and goes back to work without going to a hospital, without submitting to a very specific test to look for a very specific virus, then to them, it's just a passing illness that very temporarily and negligibly disrupted their lives, and they just went right back to life as usual. But if a person passes away, of course, that's a number that isn't subject to the kind of variance that I'm suggesting. In other words, the death toll stays where it is as one number, whereas the number of people who actually got this disease could vary significantly. So that would mean, if what I'm saying is even kind of true, that the actual fatality rate of this disease is far, 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 far lower than is being currently reported. Now, is this just speculation? Am I just talking out of my ass here? I don't know. I'm not a medical professional. However, there are people out there who are. And the same sentiment that I'm attempting to articulate is the matter of official, learned public discussion. For instance, in one county in California, Santa Clara County, a series of antibody tests is pointing in the exact same direction of what I'm suggesting. This is from nature.com. Antibody tests suggest that coronavirus infections vastly exceed official counts. Widespread antibody testing in a California county has revealed a much higher prevalence of coronavirus infection than official figures suggested. The findings also indicate that the virus is less deadly than current estimates of global case and death counts suggest. But some scientists have raised concerns about the accuracy of kits used in these studies because most have not been rigorously assessed to confirm that they are reliable. So they haven't been confirmed as reliable. Does that mean you just ignore what this information suggests? I don't think so. Let me go on with this story. An analysis of the blood of some 3,300 people living in Santa Clara County in early April found that 1 in every 66 people had been infected with coronavirus. On the basis of that finding, the researchers estimate that between 48,000 and 82,000 of that county's roughly 2 million inhabitants were infected with the virus at that time. Numbers that contrast sharply with the official case count of some 1,000 people reported in early April. Now, let me pause for a second and just sort of emphasize that point. The official figures, the same type of figures that I read out every day, indicate that at the beginning of April, out of that county of roughly 2 million people, only 1,000 people had been confirmed as having the virus or having had the virus. Whereas this study, with these antibody tests, indicate that that figure could be between 48 and 82 times higher. And yet, the death count remains the same, which means that the actual infection fatality rate is way lower by orders of magnitude than the numbers suggest, which would mean that the deadliness, the morbidity, is way lower than is being reported. And if that were the case, then this lockdown was never necessary. I'm going to continue with this story. The results are some of the first of more than a dozen seroprevalence surveys being carried out in cities worldwide to try to estimate populations' true infection rates in the absence of widespread diagnostic testing. The World Health Organization is also running global seroprevalence studies known as Solidarity 2. Many surveys are using commercial antibody kits to detect antibodies against the virus in blood samples. The presence of coronavirus-specific antibodies reveals that a person had been infected for at least a week earlier, even if they have had no symptoms. As time goes on, more and more information about this is going to come out. And at some point in the future, we're going to be able to look back on this for what it really was. I have been suggesting all along that there are a myriad of motivations that have influenced the way we have approached this as a society. One of them, of course, being concern for public health, but there's also another layer to this. Personally, I think that it would be naive at best not to even consider the possibility that there are people out there who are politically benefiting from this lockdown and who want to keep it going for as long as possible. Now, that concept is immediately dismissed as tinfoil hat wearing taboo. It's considered crazy and it's dismissed. But isn't it weird that the learned scientific minds that are giving us these models and these models and projections, by the way, which have been revised and revised and revised over and over again, that kind of error, that margin of error, which is afforded these people, it's regarded as though it's perfectly acceptable. Whereas even to suggest that there might be people trying to, for political reasons only, push this lockdown out as far as they can, that's dismissed as just being unforgivably naive. Conspiracy theories, right? Well, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a piece by somebody by the name of Victor Davis Hanson. This was published just today. This is someone else's thoughts, but some of this really makes me think. When I read some of what is written in here, it really tends to resonate with me. It's not like it's putting ideas in my head. It's almost like it's confirming things that I've already suspected or known all along, right? So let me just share with you a little bit of this story. Suppression of expression obscures the truth about the virus. Americans are acquainted with predictable but ultimately failed progressive efforts to suppress free expression by preemptive invective and politically correct finger-pointing. To believe that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's accusers revealed too many contradictions, too many lacunae, too many episodes of timely amnesia, and too many unsubstantiated accusations in their testimonies was chauvinistically to attack /smear /silence all women's voices. At least until the same sort of memory-repressed accusations focused on handsy Joe Biden. To express skepticism that current global temperatures are uniformly rising, almost entirely due to human carbon emissions. That this state of affairs poses catastrophic dangers that may end civilization as we know it. And that this emergency can only be addressed by the radical restructuring of global economies, is to be rendered a denialist, a crank, a fool. But these parameters of censorship have a logic and predictability, given their race/class/gender/environmental orthodoxy. So what explains the current taboo on topics regarding the coronavirus? It is now a truism that almost every influential model that has been advanced about the spread of the coronavirus was flawed. They almost all erred on the side of exaggerated morbidity. That's suggested in this other piece I was referring to, relating to antibody tests. But to suggest that in public is deemed Heresy. Even when the imperial commage, scarifying 2.2 million dead in the United States, was withdrawn, or when Gavin Newsom's 25.5 million infected by early May in California seemed hysterical, or today's prognostications from the University of Washington modified older models that politicians used to set policy, there was more ridicule leveled at the original skeptics than at the promulgators of such myths, despite the fact that some disastrous public policies resulted from assurances that hundreds of thousands would likely die soon from the virus. The same strange reaction met most who suggested that the virus might have reached the United States earlier than late January, or that it might already have infected far more than once thought, or that it was likely to be less lethal than assumed from the commonly used calculus to determine its toxicity. Similarly taboo was questioning the notion that everyone who died with COVID-19 died because of it, even when the dying and the deceased were not tested for the virus, and the methodology of ascertaining causes of death seemed too often reinvented or changed weekly. We were not to question the weird formula of assessing a virus's morbidity by dividing the number of deaths only by the actual number of those who had at any time tested positive for an active infection. Yet nearly the entire scientific community had agreed that the real number of those infected by the virus could be 10 times or more than the misleadingly precise numbers of positive tests. Nonetheless, daily reference fatality rates were drawn from such a flawed equation. Certainly, if such a procedure were used in flu cases, of requiring only positive flu virus tests to ascertain the denominator, then the lethality of case rate of influenza might well appear as 10% and send the country into shock. When some frontline physicians, or a rough sampling of patients, or preliminary studies suggested that some pre-ventilator cases hydroxychloroquine seemed efficacious in treating the virus, even the use of a medicine prompted widespread weaponized debate. Now, this goes on and on. Essentially, the point of the story is that by rendering certain ideas and certain utterances as being taboo, people are working to suppress any but one approach to looking at or to talking about this virus. There are those who seek to politically benefit from ignoring the unreliability of these models and these projections, and from only regarding as valid the most terrifying possible view of this. And any talk of ending this lockdown is immediately shot down as some kind of unforgivably naive conspiracy theorizing. A lot of us are starting to go nuts. A lot of us are starting to get cabin fever. And with all the free time on our hands, a lot of us are sitting here sifting through all the information, data, etc. that's being blasted at us through the media. And we're trying, as human beings naturally are inclined to do, to identify patterns and consistencies and make sense of a situation which seems to make no sense at all. And a lot of us are starting to get angry. Now, looking at the way that the federal government and the White House in particular have been responding to this, again, there are those who seek to politically benefit from what's going on. And a lot of those people want desperately to be able to paint the White House and the current president as having fumbled so badly in their approach to dealing with this at the beginning that the blood of every single person who has died from this disease is squarely on the hands of Donald Trump. Now, there was one thing that came to my attention. So the president closed down all admittance of people from China on the 31st of January. That was a move that even Dr. Fauci and other members of the coronavirus task force have lauded as being instrumental in keeping the death toll and the infection rate from skyrocketing far higher than it currently is. Which is in no way to suggest that the current numbers are acceptable, but they could and probably would have been a lot worse had we not restricted travel from China and later on from parts of Europe. January 31st, the president shuts down travel from China. On the same day, this statement was released from Nancy Pelosi's office. The Trump administration's expansion of its outrageous, un-American travel ban threatens our security, our values, and the rule of law. The sweeping rule barring more than 350 million individuals from predominantly African nations from traveling to the United States is discrimination disguised as policy. American strength has always been a beacon of hope and opportunity for people around the world whose dreams and aspirations have enriched our nation and made America more American. With this latest callous decision, the president has doubled down on his cruelty and further undermined our global leadership, our Constitution, and our proud heritage as a nation of immigrants. In the Congress and in the courts, House Democrats will continue to oppose the administration's dangerous anti-immigrant agenda. In the coming weeks, the House Judiciary Committee will mark up and bring to the floor the No Ban Act to prohibit religious discrimination in our immigration system and limit the president's ability to impose such biased and bigoted restrictions. We will never allow hatred or bigotry to define our nation or destroy our values. On the same day that the president took decisive action to restrict travel coming in from China, members of the House of Representative leadership were seeking to bring to the floor legislation that would have restricted and prevented him from taking the very step that has prevented the serious situation that we're facing to be far more serious. It was panned as being a move solely motivated by bigotry. He was called xenophobic. He was called racist. And on the same day that he did it, the Speaker of the House proposed the No Ban Act, which would have prevented him from doing this. The No Ban Act was, just to be specific, as I am wont to do, H.R. 2214, 116th Congress, second session. That was the bill in question, H.R. 2214. I would like to take a little time in preparation for a future broadcast to assemble every major news media headline which sought to downplay the severity of the virus. I would like to stand here and read them all out, make a timeline of them, and then go and contrast that with everyone from the same school of thought who is now accusing the current administration of not having taken it seriously enough. Incidentally, it was 25 days after that statement was made by Nancy Pelosi's office that Nancy Pelosi was in San Francisco urging people to come to Chinatown. Hey, there's no problem here, right? Well, I don't like this idea that once a statement uttered by a progressive becomes politically inconvenient, that it can be regarded as though it never happened. I don't like that kind of revisionism. I'm worked up today. I'm worked up today for a number of reasons. And I am beginning to firmly believe that while the virus is real and while the virus is deadly, the way that it's been handled, the way that it's been reported, and the true nature of how deadly it really is has been vastly exaggerated, largely for the political benefit of people who oppose the current presidential administration. And not just this current administration. There is a globalist ideology that transcends any one political figure or any one presidential term. And I think it's time to start taking more seriously now the idea that this whole thing and the unprecedented disruption to our lives that it's caused is being pushed and motivated and animated by far less altruistic concerns than public health. I'm going to leave things there for today. Be good to each other.